Sure, Congress should repair that. You know, this whole notion that all of a sudden centuries of bad behavior, centuries of laws that have been used to neutralize voting, all of a sudden goes away because you have had a half century of laws trying to make those corrections. The fact of the matter is, and we've seen it, legislatures all over this country are now passing laws that bring back what I call a modern day application of poll taxes and other kinds of devices that were used to nullify votes. I mean, when you talk about voter ID, that's a term that we've put out here and to camouflage other kinds of activities. For instance, I've never voted in my life when I didn't ID myself. So the question is not whether or not we have voter ID. The question is, what are you requiring for that ID? Why is it okay for the ID to be a hunter's license, but it's not okay for it to be a student activity card? These are the kinds of things that are being used. All of a sudden now, we see redistricting being done, and though the law says you shouldn't, they're stacking African Americans all into one district. That's not new. At the turn of the last century, in the 1890s, in South Carolina, congressional redistricting was done after the 1890 census. And in that redistricting, they were all over the state, didn't have one man, one vote. And they just lumped all of the black communities into one congressional district. Way out of whack, but again, one man, one vote. And it stayed that way for 95 years. Then you pass laws that says you got to be able to so-called literacy tests, and the person administering the literacy test wouldn't recognize the right answer when they heard it. And so these kinds of things you've had going on for a long time, and we're bringing that back with a modern application of those same things.
Well, in relation to that question, or in relation to that topic, Congressman, of course, this is this issue of gerrymandering, this manipulation of district boundaries to gain partisan advantage. Some top Democratic attorneys are arguing before state and federal courts that district maps, as you said, have been drawn in a handful of states that violated the Voting Rights Act by improperly packing black voters into a small number of districts, limiting their influence. Is there anything wrong with the practice per se, and do you think should the task of drawing up district lines be taken out of the hands of politicians and given to perhaps special commissions? I
don't think so. I think the politicians can be made to do the right things. They were doing the right thing with the proper application of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. That's exactly right. When they got this new interpretation of the Voting Rights Act is when they start going back to stacking people. They weren't stacking people before. You look at it, the Justice Department says, wait a minute, this is too much of a deviation here. And you had to go back and redo the cases. Now, all of a sudden, that's what the form is all about. You've got Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act, which renders Section 5 kind of impotent. And so that's what's happened here. Sure, it ought to stay, I think, in the hands of the legislative bodies, but the guidelines should be drawn up and followed so that they won't have stacking, which I call bleaching, because you're putting all these black people in one district in order to bleach out all the districts around it. So it's more bleaching than stacking.